Second item is by Senator Bridget Valverde, a Senate resolution supporting federal legislation granting statehood to the people of Washington, D.C. Senator Valverde.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can that be read?
Senator Valverde requested the resolution be read. The clerk will please do so.
Senate resolution supporting federal legislation granting statehood to the people of Washington, D.C. Whereas the people living on the land that would eventually be designated as the District of Columbia were provided the right to vote for representation in Congress when the United States Constitution was ratified in 1788. And whereas the passage of the Organic Act of 1801 placed the District of Columbia under the exclusive authority of the United States Congress and abolished residents' right to vote for members of Congress and the President and Vice President of the United States. And whereas residents of the District of Columbia were granted the right to vote for the President and Vice President through the passage of the 23rd Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1961. And whereas as of 2020, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that the District of Columbia's population at approximately 712,000 residents is comparable to the populations of Wyoming with 582,000, Vermont with 623,000, Alaska with 731,000, and North Dakota with 765,000. And whereas residents of the District of Columbia share all the responsibilities of United States citizenship, including paying more federal taxes than residents of 22 states, service on federal juries, and defending the United States as members of the United States Armed Forces in every war since the War for Independence, yet they are denied full representation in Congress. And whereas the residents of the District of Columbia themselves have endorsed statehood for the District of Columbia and passed district-wide referendum on November 8, 2016, which favored statehood by 86%. And whereas no other democratic nation denies the right of self-government, including participation in its national legislature, to the residents of its capital. And whereas residents of the District of Columbia lack full democracy, equality, and citizenship enjoyed by the residents of the 50 states. And whereas the United States Congress has repeatedly interfered with the District of Columbia's limited self-government by enacting laws that affect the District of Columbia's expenditure of its locally raised tax revenue, including barring the usage of locally raised revenue, thus violating the fundamental principle that states and local governments are best suited to enact legislation which represents the will of its citizens. And whereas although the District of Columbia has passed consecutive balanced budgets since fiscal year 1997, it still faces the possibility of being shut down yearly because of congressional deliberations over the federal budget. And whereas the District of Columbia Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton and Delaware United States Senator Tom Carper introduced the 117th Congress, House Resolution 51, which had historically passed the House on June 26th of 2020 during the 116th Congress, and Senate Bill 51, the Washington, D.C. Admission Act, that provides the state of Washington, D.C., and would have all rights of citizenship as tax-paying members, including 2 senators and at least 1 House member. And whereas the United Nations Human Rights Committee has called on the United States Congress to address the District of Columbia's lack of political equality, and the Organization of American States has declared the disenfranchisement of the District of Columbia residents as a violation of its charter agreement to which the United States is a signatory. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate of the State of Rhode Island hereby supports admitting Washington, D.C. into the Union as a state of the United States of America. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be and she is hereby authorized and directed to transmit duly certified copies of this resolution to the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Minority Leader of the United States Senate, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Minority Leader of the United States House of Representatives, Senator Jack Reed, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Representative James Langevin, Representative David Cicilline, and the President of Students for D.C. Statehood.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Valverde.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. The most fundamental right any of us has is the right to vote for our own elected leaders who will be our voice in government. That's the foundation of what we do here in this chamber to represent the people of Rhode Island, and that's the bedrock on which this nation was founded. And yet, the more than 700,000 people of Washington, D.C. are denied the promise of American democracy, are denied the right of full voting representation in Congress. The residents of D.C. have been demanding statehood since it became the seat of our federal government 220 years ago. That is 220 years of taxation without representation, 220 years of disenfranchisement of a city of vibrant people. The very people whose work and expertise our federal government relies on to carry out the work of the people. Nearly 20% of DC residents are federal employees, and they do not have a full voice in that government. Just as our colleague Senator Mendes so eloquently reminded us last week with regards to the people of Puerto Rico, the residents of DC are part of our shared history, but are not part of our shared voice. 20 years ago, I moved to Washington to attend college, and suddenly I was surrounded by friends, neighbors, and others who had been stripped of this essential right. We knew it was unjust, and just as today, people clamored for full representation and full participation in our democracy. The necessity of statehood was so obvious, so urgent, it seemed like change must be right around the corner. That was 20 years ago, and the need is only more obvious and more urgent today. As a college student, I was honored to work for Senator Paul Strauss, one of the non-voting shadow senators from the District of Columbia. Like the rest of the shadow delegation, he is elected by his neighbors, but not formally seated by Congress, and he works toward the goal of statehood. In that work, I felt the frustration of a city that is so deeply tied to the workings of our federal government, but that didn't have a full say in the policies it enacted. We're a small state here in Rhode Island, and we all know how important it is to have our voices heard in the halls of Congress. We are lucky to have such a great congressional delegation looking out for our interests. Every American deserves that. They deserve to ask their U.S. senators and their congressperson to support this bill, oppose that measure, applaud them when we feel they've done a good job, and hold them accountable when we feel they haven't. Every American deserves that. DC's electorate is majority people of color, the very same voters who are being targeted for disenfranchisement in states across our country. There are those who would like to see the continued erosion of voting rights, the continued denial of representation for Black and brown folks. In a time when our democratic institutions are being undermined and access to the ballot is being threatened, let us finally take this step to extend the fullest of American rights to the residents of our nation's capital. Let us give them the full voting representation they deserve in Congress by making the District of Columbia the 51st state. I urge all of my colleagues to support this resolution, and I happily move passage.
Senator Valverde moves passage of the resolution, seconded by Senator Felag, Senator DeMario, Senator Acosta, Senator Lombardi, Senator Coleman, Senator Pearson, Senator Casada, Senator Lawson, Senator Mack, Senator Anderson, Senator Mendes, Senator Miller, Senator Chacon, Senator McCaffrey, Senator Goodwin, Senator Lombardo, Senator Burke, Senator Archibald, Senator Connell, Senator Corkin, Senator Bell, Senator Murray, Senator Golden, Senator Coyne, Senator 70, Senator DePalmer, Senator Bell, Senator Chacon, Senator Sosnowski. Discussion on the resolution. Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The resolution passes.